So before I get to kind of fleshing out things with the boots, the hands, putting that back in and bringing it all back together, uh, one question that does come up is, what happens to the other stuff, right? I have all this texture, this sculpting. Now remember the original was about 500,000 polys, so technically, even though I dynamesh this to get cleaner edges between the different subtools, technically the painting and sculpting isn't really above 500,000. So with this new base mesh, this is 20,000. Um, Usually what I'll do is I'll basically turn off solo. I'll just have the two subtools, the Dynamesh version and this new version here. And if you want to recapture or basically transfer the detail, we just simply do it through project all. So I usually, to help myself, will turn on solo, and then I'll go to project. You want to make sure color and geometry is on, hit project all. It'll say, hey, one or more visible tools has polypaint data. Say yes, always yes, and it'll transfer over. Now, as you can see, because right now there's no UVs, and ZBrush bases all its color information on just simply vertices, it treats vertices like pixels, right? So that's how it displays color. So that's why I often will divide my mesh up to, and I usually like to go step by step just in case I get any weird glitches or errors. I find this often eliminates it, so I'll divide up and hit project all. Kind of like when I Z-remesh down in half and then in half and then in half. It's sort of the similar process, but now going back up. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to basically capture any and all sculpting and color data that I had, that I put work into, and just keep it. And so projecting, which is really saying, hey, transfer these shapes, transfer these colors, will allow me to do that. And you see as I divide, okay, I'll divide again, project all, right? It'll get much, much cleaner. The shapes will match much, much better. Control D, project all. So I'm at 1.4 million, okay? Sometimes these shapes won't translate the best because, again, the topology doesn't exactly flow with some of these patches, but I'll show you how to kind of work around that, especially at the lower division level. We'll just project, and there we go. Okay, and I might divide one more time and hit project just to get kind of cleaner edges there. So I still have pretty clean results. It's not perfect, but this for me is kind of work in progress texture. It's a rough blocking of mesh, or maybe close to production ready, right? So when I see the projection, the edges are much sharper because the poly count's a lot higher, and I've got the low poly right here. So sometimes at this stage too, I will do additional sculpting, maybe additional texture work. But what's kind of great about this is, if you notice, right, I'm hitting Shift D to go down in divisions because when I divide, the shortcut, by the way, is Control D. So Control D goes up in divisions, right? So now I've got how many divisions? 6, probably 5 divisions. Shift D goes down. That's a shortcut to just jump down in divisions. D goes up, okay? So what's great about this, and I do want to show you this, is that, yeah, now I have a lot of possibility here to do things like basically export this mesh, okay? So for example, this is pretty much close to production ready, and you can start testing. So if I hit Go Z on this, and you've already got it set up for Maya, it will basically transfer this over. What's also kind of nice, and these aren't necessarily the same poly groups I would use, for example, for let's say creating UVs. I might split them up differently where it's more in line with what clothing might be. So the sleeve would be one big poly group, and I would split it down the middle on the underside. But it can be a starting point for me to test things like texture and export. The other great thing about this is that because I did the project all, right, and now I've got a high poly here at the highest division level, and at the lowest division level, this is my low poly. So I've actually got my high and low poly in one subtool just via divisions. Yeah, the idea is that basically we've transferred all the data, like I said, through project all. So I can actually toss out the other versions of this, like my original kind of Dynamesh version that was merged subtools. I'm going to delete that version. I'm going to delete this other Dynamesh version because now, like I said, I've got this one addition that has everything. High poly, and then if I Shift D down, low poly, okay? So if I hop over to Maya here, there's the character mesh, right? Ready to rig, ready to go. And what's kind of great about this is that if you're starting to test things for Substance Painter and Maya, what I also like to do as a test point, again, I'm not necessarily set on these polygroups being the UVs, but you can go to Z plugin, go to UV master, turn on polygroups, hit unwrap. It's done unwrapping. And what's kind of crazy about the way ZBrush operates, unlike Substance Painter, which has you have two different meshes, a high poly and a low poly, ZBrush will refer to the mesh itself and its division levels. So division level 1, it considers the base, which it is, and whatever higher division level you have as the high poly. So this is the highest division level is your high poly, the low is your low poly. And so let's say I want to start testing UV maps and textures. I'll say, just as a starting point or a ballpark for testing, 4K under UV map, 16 pixel border, which is pretty much universally my default in Maya, Substance, and ZBrush. And if you go to texture map, again, it's a bit silly with ZBrush, but you have to go to your high poly, your highest division level. You go to create. Because this is all on the model, it's in what's called PolyPaint. And when you hit new from PolyPaint, it looks at the fact that you've made those UVs and bakes out that color texture now to UVs. And then for a normal map, I will usually jump down to the low poly and go to normal map and simply hit create normal map. It'll take a second to calculate, and then it's all there, right? So any sculpting detail. And like I said, a lot of times when I'm at this new high division level, I will do additional sculpting, maybe some detailing or additional paint, whatever it might be. And now when I hit Go Z, those two texture maps will go with it, with the low poly, into Maya. Okay, so now in Maya, if I hit 6 on my keyboard, there's the texture on the mesh. And if I go into bump map, you usually have to make sure this is set to color space raw. And you'll see pretty much, usually as a way to see the normal maps too, I'll turn on blend and kind of make it artificially shiny for a while, right? So you can see any kind of potential sculpting detail that was on the high poly. So we've got the best of both worlds now, right? We've got a high poly model that we can use for baking either directly in ZBrush or for export to Substance, and a low poly that's clean for rigging, ready for animation, right? Ready for production. Even though I don't have the hands and boots yet, we'll come back to that in a minute. One of the things I will do to get production ready, typically when I have the full body, is I will usually use bonus tools, go to bonus tools, modify 0 pivots, and go to move pivot to base and 0 local values. So I'll hit that. It drops the pivot down to the bottom. Make sure there's no scaling. And then if there's any XYZ positioning that's odd, set it to 0. And then your character is essentially ready to be configured and rigged. It should be at the 0 at the origin of the world. Like I said, I'm going to replace this with one that has boots, so the height will be a little different, but that's good practice, generally speaking, when rigging.